Friday, everybody. Happy Fun Friday. Welcome back to the House of Wrestling Podcast. It is me, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am every Wednesday and Friday by Innes McVey. Innes, welcome back to the House of Wrestling Podcast.
Thank you, Nick. You've got it nice and fancy for me today, nice and comfortable, so I'm ready to chat about some wrestling.
Yes, fireside chat here we're going to have about professional wrestling today. And if you're watching us live in video form, we want to thank you. You are a ClubHaus member. Every Wednesday and Friday, ClubHaus members invited in here. You can jump in the comment section, be a part of the show, and then we release it on the podcast platforms and YouTube, everywhere else after the fact. But if you want to be a part of the show, join the ClubHaus. We got all kinds of stuff we do in the ClubHaus. I'll talk about it later at the end in our club housekeeping segment. But as far as today's show goes, I should have brought my run sheet up. Here we go. As far as today's show go, if we have time, at the end of the show, we're going to talk about Butterbean. Everyone loves Butterbean. I hope we have time for Butterbean. I really do.
Let's hope so.
We have more on the fallout from Scott D'Amore, leaving TNA if we have time. We're going to talk about backstage AEW morale and more shakeups within the AEW office. We got Okada to AEW, Drew McIntyre's contract, the latest on the WrestleMania XL main event. And first, of course, we're going to get to the latest Vince McMahon news. But before we do, we have our first comment. It comes from Chris. Good morning, y'all. This is the greatest podcast on God's green earth. Chris.
Thank you.
Love you. Love you, Chris. All right. Latest news here from the Vince McMahon scandal. Or it's really, as we've been saying, scandals. Multiple. And
plural.
First off, why is News Nation on top of this story more than any other outlet on the face of the planet Earth? I
feel like they've just gotten everybody, and I don't know if it's just they feel they've got like the gold here with this. They've just decided we're just going to keep digging it, because I think they got one of the first major interviews, and then I think they've just been doing it ever since. So
they got Constantine Kairos, right? Then they got the lawyer for Janelle Grant. Remember, she was on, and then and then this is the trifecta here. Now we've got. I got to meet whoever their producer is. They can come work for whoever this is.
Come work for us.
Come work for House of Wrestling, my friend. Whoever you are. So anyway, long story short, Ashley Massaro's friend is on the show. There's about a 5-minute clip. Innes did a wonderful write-up about the appearance here this morning, and basically says that Stephanie McMahon was in the boardroom, knew about the allegations. Ashley said them to her face. Vince was there. Other executives were there. And at that point, Ashley was essentially threatened to keep quiet about the whole incident. And so now, as we said, this web is going to, come together. We have Stephanie McMahon knowledgeable about these Ashley Massaro allegations. Does this change anything for you?
Not particularly. I think ultimately, we've said this before, but it's not just an issue that ends and stops with Vince. This is a company-wide issue. It's not as if, people like to put up this whole facade of, Stephanie's, the nice one of the McMahons. But let's be honest, she based on this and other stuff we know about how this has been so integral in the company, she has to have known stuff. And it really just puts across this, this idea that we need to know more about, not just in this incident, but with the Janelle Grant stuff, about, what the company is doing to tackle this.
Yeah, and it brings up more questions about just like what's being hidden, what's known but not known. If they're keeping something as serious as this under wraps, right? And Stephanie was knowledgeable about it and was complicit. And again, John Laurinaitis' lawyer said, we don't love the term cover up, right? So I guess we won't call it that, but
no.
A distraction from the issue at best, or worst, maybe, whatever. But anyway, and then you start to think about the Janelle Grant suit, right? Now, if you already have a group of people that are willing to lie, deceive, cover, not supposed to cover up. We'll just leave it at lie and deceive the public. Okay,
sure. We'll go with that.
We'll leave it there. We'll
leave it there.
Couch it there for the moment. You already have people that or it sounds allegedly are capable of having horrifying information and trying to control the narrative around it. And so, again, we're going to talk about the WrestleMania XL main event picture here. Dave Meltzer in The Observer goes out of his way to be like, while some people think the whole thing with The Rock was intended to be a distraction from the Vince issue, it was booked several weeks before. Now, I've heard the T-Mobile Arena was settled on just like a couple days before the Wall Street Journal allegations went out.
Right.
Still trying to clean up that timeline, but it sounded like too far before the Wall Street Journal allegations came out. It's possible that somebody from Janelle Grant's team or somebody knowledgeable of that case let somebody at WWE know this thing is coming down the tracks and you guys need to be ready for it, right? At which point Dwayne joins TKO and we start this whole thing up. So as much as I understand, and I don't want to be the guy with the tinfoil hat on here, as much as I understand where Dave is coming from saying this was all planned a little before, I want to be very clear. We still all do not know the timeline here for who knew what when and why actions were taken based off of that knowledge. So,
and even if you disregard that, you know, it was only like 4 years ago after Ashley's passing that WWE put out that statement saying Ashley never came forth to management. You know, management had no knowledge of this. So, and now all this is coming out. So clearly there's a contradiction there. So that raises big questions.
There's, of course, the old mafia line, dead men tell no tales. Sure. It is because you're right. They did it 2019 because they were forced to, because these documents came out from the concussion lawsuit that were damning. And so they had to say something. They chose to go that route. And in hindsight, kind of finding out what we're knowing now and that dead men tell no tales thing, where you can come out and say, this person didn't tell us or whatever. They're not there to defend themselves. And if that is true, also very crass assessment of how WWE dealt with that situation. So yeah, again, all this brings up a lot more questions about how things operate at WWE land, right?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I feel like
that's
going to be a narrative we've got for the next couple of weeks, because guaranteed there's going to be more stuff coming out over the next little while. And
Dave Meltzer again, and I don't usually like specifically talk to Dave's writing style in the Observer, but he does make, I think, a somewhat cogent point, which is that if there was an inkling of let's get people to talk about something that's not Vince, it does seem to have worked on wrestling fans. Now, the general public, I think the general public is disgusted with WWE and whatever Vince, but with wrestling fans, and this is a point I made on Wednesday, it does feel like, we're going to get into this WrestleMania main event stuff. This is where fans they don't want to think about Vince and Laurinaitis. They want to think about what we're about to talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we saw that with the whole "We Want Cody" trending thing. That was like one of the top worldwide trends. And I don't think I've ever seen Janelle Grant get anywhere near that level. I mean, people obviously talked about it when it came out, when the lawsuit emerged, but there's been nothing really to that level, to that extent anyway.
I do wonder what the fans can do to force a reaction from WWE, because I mean, to be fair, we've seen nothing. We haven't seen a statement. We've seen.
There was supposed to be something coming today. There's supposed to be a response at some point today. I don't know what time limit.
Oh, that's right.
Today was the 21-day limit. So there may be something later today.
And that will. You're saying the response is it would come to legal filing, right? This is the day.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be like an official response to the company, but it would be like some sort of I think it's a response from the defendant. So it would probably be Vince or WWE or Laurinaitis. So
got it. Well, let's talk about this thing that's totally not a distraction from the Vince stuff, the WrestleMania main event, WrestleMania XL main event picture. So for a couple weeks now, Ennis and I have just come to the conclusion they're just winging it, right? And
very much. Yeah.
I think we were proven correct by the Observer today, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. It's pretty accurate.
So, yeah. Okay, so at some point, here I'm gonna try to meander through this. All right. So at some point,
all right. Good luck.
At some point before the Rumble, it was decided Rock's gonna be the one to take on Roman Reigns, right? Yes. That's why he's coming back.
Yes.
But they still have Cody Rhodes win the Royal Rumble
and point at Roman Reigns at the end, and say at the press conference he's challenging Roman Reigns. Let's add that.
Now there were a couple ideas here about how we were gonna work this all together, I guess. The plan they settled on, according to the Observer, was Triple H's idea on the February 2nd episode of SmackDown for Cody to come out and say, "We want to take everything from you. The Rock is taking my spot. He's gonna face you at WrestleMania." That was wildly rejected by the audience. Now, it was also noted there that you had to cut, because this was a little choppily written. We weren't really sure exactly. We kind of deciphered it. What we think the other idea was was that the Bloodline was going to attack Cody Rhodes, taking him off TV entirely. Yeah. And then at the press conference, they were just going to set up Rock versus Roman Reigns. Now, would that have been better or worse? What do you think?
I think that would have been slightly better, because then it doesn't feel like Cody had a involvement in that segment, which I think was the main thing people were annoyed about. But then at the same time, you wouldn't have gotten that mega reaction for Cody on social media. So, there's ups and downs to it. But at the same time, the whole idea that apparently, it's a bit choppy, as we said, but the wording sounded like it was a plan that came up either before or just after Punk got injured. So I don't know to the extent of whether or not that affected things, and then they changed course to what actually happened. So it's strange.
There's a lot going on here. And so either way, Dave's saying the plan was, so if Cody had been taken out by the Bloodline, he would have eventually come back to take on Roman Reigns for the title. Now, I love this little note, whether that was at WrestleMania or slightly after. So now we're in a position where we're going to have Cody win the Rumble, but we know he's not going to get that title shot at Mania. We know it's going to happen at Backlash, because he's going to get taken out and replaced by The Rock in the wildest WCW 2000 storyline booking I've ever heard in my entire life.
Here's a question for you. Is that worse than him not what would you say is worse? Him not challenging a world champion at WrestleMania for that title shot, or him not having the world title shot at WrestleMania and having it another pay-per-view? Because I don't know.
I don't know why I just don't know why they just didn't have The Rock win the Rumble. Right?
Yeah. I mean, that is the obvious choice. That is the thing that fixes all this situation, but they didn't go with it.
Because it doesn't seem like the Punk stuff really affected, like, it maybe a little bit, because they had to figure out what to do with Rollins, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But like, it doesn't really feel like that would have affected anything going on with the Bloodline stuff. And like, if people had been pissed off about Cody not being in the main event and really like fought against it, you still had the chamber. You still had the chamber where you could do something to make a change if you need to. But I think if you'd have just had The Rock come out at number 30, place goes ape shit. He bucks Cody, wins the Rumble. I think people would have been maybe not thrilled, but they would have understood.
The overwhelming reaction would have been more positive. And if it would have spun out the whole Vince, scandal stuff, because as much as Cody winning the Rumble was great, media headlines across the world, The Rock returns and wins the Royal Rumble. That's gonna catch on.
So before this, we had Rollins and I'll jump around a little bit here myself. Rollins and Rhodes, they did that tease that they were going to do a match before the February 2nd SmackDown because they wanted it as a backup plan in case something happened with Roman Reigns and The Rock. But then after that segment was over, I guess the plan quickly became, we're going to do that, and then Rock and Roman, and then Rock gets booed on February 2nd. And then him and Brian Gewirtz, his right-hand man, decide that if the fans are going to boo him, then Rock should be the heel. And that's when things... winging it, were shifted by Johnson to becoming a tag team match on night one of WrestleMania. And despite how clunky this all was and clumsily it all came together, apparently a lot of people in the company see it as a success. A lot of people talking about it, but maybe don't necessarily love that Dwayne Johnson is a hated member of the community now. Who knows? There's pros and cons to winging it, I guess, in this situation.
Yeah. See, it feels like this kind of brings in some more insight into the fact of it winging it. It feels like The Rock sort of influence and Brian Gerwitz's influence on the creative plans have really kind of shifted things up, and that's probably why partly it's felt so hodgepodgely done. It feels like they've been trying to work stuff out, maybe with Johnson and Gerwitz, and that's why it's been so last minute put together. It feels like.
It does feel like, and again, I made the WCW 2000 reference earlier, but it does kind of feel like this is what happened in WCW when you had these people with big egos that had power, right? Like Hunter's in charge of creative, but Dwayne's on the board, so both of them are kind of fighting for their spot. They're trying to work together to make something happen. Then you got people like Cody, it's not like Cody's voice doesn't mean anything in the room,
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
It's a lot of people, here's the thing in the wake of Vince, because people got very used to with Vince, this psychopath is the last line of communication. If we don't do what he says, he's going to yell at us all and break us as human beings, right? I'm not saying it needs to be that, obviously, right?
No.
But there does seem to be a problem with, like, what is the final... Like, that's what this seems like. Too many cooks in the kitchen to me is what this came down to.
Oh, for
right?
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I feel it, for sure. And like, there was a point I was going to make and I forgot about it.
It's okay. I got another...
It happens.
I got another point in the chamber here, and I'm
there
ready
we
to
go.
roll.
Good, you saved me.
I'm taking a 3-day weekend after this. I am ready to roll. I'm mentally already
Excellent.
gone. Already gone. So with this, now that, again, we're winging it, okay? Now we're in a position where I'm going to guess the night 1 main event is this tag match, and then night 2 starts with Rollins, McIntyre, ends with Roman,
I would
Cody.
say so. Yeah, because they did that with Rollins. Well, there was the Rumble. Was it the 2019 Rumble? Rollins opened it. Did he win the Rumble that year, or was that someone else? Because he challenged Lesnar and beat Lesnar in that show, and I can't remember. Because I think they have done it a couple of times where the Rumble winner hasn't technically main evented.
Yes.
I'm
no,
curious.
I know that that's happened.
I
thought
about this a couple of days ago, but I couldn't remember. Possibly. So either way.
So let's say that it's going to look something like that, which I think is within the realm of possibility. Yeah. Seth Rollins is going to be back from injury in 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah. You are going to then put him in a tag team match on night 1. Knock on wood that he's going to open night 2 right now. I just want to be really real about the fact that they are like, it's enough to say, do everything you can to come back from injury in time to main event WrestleMania. It is something else entirely to say, come back ready enough to wrestle 2 WrestleMania matches back to back. I just calling the elephant out in the room here that they're treading lightly.
It's tempting fate a little bit. It is. And I mean, maybe they could go a bit safe with the tag match considering it is Rock. So maybe, they could tone it down a little bit, but that has to be the main event at night 1. And you can't have a really safe match as the main event of WrestleMania. Yeah,
that hit me this morning. I was just like, what if Rollins gets injured in this tag match that should have never happened? Right? Like, what happened?
That's always been in the back of my mind. What is their plan if Rollins can't do WrestleMania? Because as much as he will be back, supposedly, that is a distinct possibility.
Look, Rock's a heel. I'm sending him down to Australia, taking somebody out of that chamber match and having him come in and go. I mean, him and Rollins, Rollins, McIntyre, beautiful story. It's certainly something the fans will get behind. But I think this, man, what again?
Two birds, one stone. You may as well.
Two birds, one stone. I think you do Rock Rollins. Just why make Rollins wrestle twice? Why fill up all these main event pictures with 4 guys?
Because The Rock doesn't want that, and he has his own creative ideas and all the other stuff, apparently.
Well, as the sands of time through the hourglass, these are the days of our lives. This will continue on at Elimination Chamber. Grayson Waller has announced that Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins are going to be his guest on a special Grayson Waller effect. I'm guessing this is where we're going to rubber meets the road. We're going to find out if we're getting a tag match or something else here, right?
I would assume the tease is coming on SmackDown because both Rock and Roman are on SmackDown, and Elimination Chamber's the week after next week. So, yeah, I would assume they do the tease on SmackDown, or they at least mention it offhandedly, and then I assume the full announcement comes at Elimination Chamber for the big pop.
Now, I would think with this tag match, and I don't know why, but I would think with this tag match that you're going to want to put some kind of stipulation on it to raise the stakes of it, right? I don't know.
Because I don't think it's that big of a match on its own. Rock and Roman, yeah. But the tag match, and especially because Rock and Roman aren't on opposite sides, it's a little odd.
Yeah, and I would think, again, something that affects night 2. If Rock and Roman lose, then the bloodline is banned from ringside during Roman and Cody. So we can't get all the shenanigans we got during last year's main event.
True.
I think that's a possibility.
It does possibly overcomplicate the main event, though. I think people maybe would then go a foregone conclusion of, well, Roman and Seth are winning, and then that Roman losing 2 nights in a row.
Well, maybe it's if Cody and Rollins wins, the match is a Hell in a Cell match, and if there's
options there.
Yeah, if Rock and Roman win, then it just becomes a no DQ, right? And you kind of keep the something. It just feels to me like this match needs.
It does need a little something. Maybe they'll thing it in the storyline, because granted, it has only been like 2 weeks since it was first teased, but still.
So Fightful reporting that Drew McIntyre has had his contract extended beyond WrestleMania due to time missed for injury. We don't really know exactly how long. A new deal doesn't sound like it's been put together, pen to paper wise yet, finalized, but it does sound like both sides really want to make a deal. And, you know, I feel like we're beating a dead horse here. We've talked about Drew McIntyre at least once a week since we've been doing the show. And again, why would he leave? Doesn't make any sense.
There's no point. They've pushed him so heavily in the last couple of weeks, and AEW is a risk that I don't think is really worth it for him. So I don't see him leaving.
And the Observer also saying Braun Breaker, he's going to finish out his NXT storyline and then come to the main roster. Adoy.
Well, you never know. Maybe, they could do the double duty thing, but I think that does make sense. It's time.
Adoy. Nobody says Adoy anymore. That was very. You
weren't even. I haven't heard that in years.
Yeah. Exactly. Adoy. AEW. Let's talk for. Okay, so we'll start with the topic we didn't get to on the last episode, and then we'll get to some other stuff. So first of all, Fightful reporting Kazuchika Okada is expected to sign with AEW after wrapping up his New Japan duties. As of now, it doesn't sound like pen has been put to paper with AEW, but they're very confident that they're going to, with their offer. And the first half of March is expected to be very big for AEW between what's expected to be Okada and Mercedes Moné joining in Boston at the Big Business Show. Do you think that infusing these two are enough to really kind of bring the spark back to what's going on with AEW at the moment?
I think it's certainly not a CM Punk level, big return. But I do think, more so Mercedes, I would say, honestly, because I feel like the AEW women's division has kind of been it's meandered over the last couple of months. I think there's been some absences, Jimmy Hayter's not been around, Britt Baker's not been around, they've been missing a lot of people. Whereas I feel like bringing in Mercedes on there, it brings in some buzz, it brings in some new matchups and stuff. Okada obviously would be great in AEW as well, but I feel like we've seen a lot of this is my concern always with AEW. I feel like we've seen a lot of these matches, whether it be through Forbidden Door or stuff in New Japan already.
It doesn't, yeah. Like Okada, like same thing with Will Ospreay. It's like, oh, they're part of the were they not part of the company? Because they're already kind of regularly around. It won't be the first time we'll have heard the coin drops, right? With Mercedes. Again, we didn't see her at AEW, but she did the New Japan run. She had a match with Willow that was kind of teased, right? Or not teased, that happened.
She only did like 5 matches with New Japan and Stardom overall. It really wasn't many.
No, well, then she got injured and then she couldn't do any more matches, of course. Right? So, again, these I don't feel new, and it's going to be about how they're used. The reason I ask if it's going to bring the spark back is the Observer saying, that despite the positive picture that Tony Khan is painting of high ratings and revenue, there is a good morale in the company, but many worried that the popularity is declining based off of these reduced size houses for their live events, which is which is a tangible thing. You can look around and see
it's noticeable.
Decide if things are going well or not.
Yeah. Do you think part of that is because of the success of WWE over the last couple of months? Because it feels like over the last 6 months or so, WWE's been on a really, really hot streak. And I'm wondering if that's just affected it by proxy.
Here's the thing. Is yes, and I think that WWE is real weak right now, but I think that AEW would have been better able to capitalize on this if Tony Khan hadn't shit the bed at the World's End press conference. To be quite frank,
just a little bit, no,
and I think that performance really made it difficult for them to capitalize on this moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then there was the whole like weird booking of that show as well with MJF just losing quite suddenly, and then Samoa Joe's been great as champion, to be fair to them, but there were some weird choices on World's End.
Yeah, and I don't mind. I don't dislike Samoa Joe's champion. The Young Bucks stuff is very divisive, right? And the Darby Allin promo from Dynamite really upset a lot of people.
Yeah.
I get kind of the like leaning in to like realism to heighten a feud, but when you get so into like the backstage politics of it, you lose a lot of people, right? Like the thing I will say about WWE is the bloodline works because it's a bunch of dudes, bad looking dudes who just beat people up and cheat. And everybody understands that, right? It's
the one time now that it's kind of started to falter is the time that they've started to introduce the sort of real world stuff with the whole Rock Triple H stuff. So, I mean, there's your case in point right there.
Dropping F-bombs, getting real up in here. So as AEW is attempting to pivot and find that spark again, the Observer and Fightful kind of dueling reports here about how Rocky Romero and QT Marshall have joined AEW's front office or rejoined in QT's place. Romero is going to be focused on New Japan, CMLL, and other international partnerships while working for New Japan. Both are going to be working as coaches and to develop talent, which QT's role seems more specifically towards developing talent. And QT is also going to be allowed to take non-WWE outside AEW bookings. So QT back in the mix. Kind of a tough pill to swallow, if I'm being honest. Like, hey, QT, we know you really want to be a wrestler. We have no interest in that. But if you would like to develop other wrestlers, we would love to have you in an executive. Here's 6 figures.
I do feel like it's probably the best role for everyone, though, because ultimately QT gets his like outside bookings. You know, he can still do his stuff with, I believe it's AAA he wrestles with primarily right now. But yeah, he can do stuff with that. He doesn't have to be contracted anywhere else other than WWE, you know, and he still gets to do the backstage stuff, which from everything we've heard, he was great at. Rocky, I think, is an excellent pickup. I don't know how he is doing everything he does because he's wrestling New Japan back office. You know, he's basically the main liaison for English talent there. And now stuff with AEW. So I'm very happy to see that, but I'm very concerned that he's doing way too much. But more power to him.
Hey, good for it. Hey, pick up, make your money, my friend. The thing about QT coming back is this came on the heels of Cody looking really good and that Darby promo, right? And now QT's back. You know, I'll put on the tinfoil hat here. You know, if you're trying to show Cody Rhodes there's a road back. You know, there's
you never know. Listen, if the last 2 years has taught me anything, you never know what the hell's going to happen.
Hey, Cody, you know what? You could finish that story, or you could finish this story because you never.
You come back. We'll help you finish the story.
We painted you as the good EVP. You're the good one, right? We love you. You come back, we'll wipe clean. You can compete for the AEW title. Your dad never won that one either, right?
No. Nope.
Come on. You can win. It also didn't exist, but hey, that could be yours. All roads lead back, my friend. Lastly here, and I don't think we're gonna have time for Butterbean and Scott D'Amore here. I do want to make sure that
What about Billy Corgan? Do we have time for him?
Billy's not going to be on the show here today. We're not going to have time for Billy in the CW. But I'll end real quickly before we throw to Brutus Creed, our interview to wrap up the show for Friday. Kota Ibushi, according to the Observer, out 6 to 12 months after ankle surgery. Another big loss, right? Yeah. But again, like Ibushi, Okada, Monet, these are all very big names. How are they affecting the what are you doing with them? What's the stories you're telling, right? That's I think the big glaring kind of question mark a lot of fans have for AEW at the moment.
Yeah, the problem with Ibushi as well is I think ever since that injury he had in New Japan at the end of the G1, I think it was 2021, ever since then he has not looked the same since he had that big debacle with New Japan, and it's only looked worse since that Noah match. So I'm hoping this time off he can take some time off and like learn how to either like slow down a little bit or recapture whatever it is he's missing, because it just over the last couple of years it hasn't been the same.
Christopher Zonto here. Vengeance for Billy and the CW, my friend. Hey, someday,
one day we will do it.
We'll get to it, buddy. Don't you worry about it. All right, that brings us before we get to the Brutus Creed interview. I do want to first of all read an Apple Podcast review that I believe actually comes from Chris. And so, Chris, since you are tuned in live, I'm going to read yours here on the show. He headlines it, "Appointment Listening." He said, "I love the show. Nick is outstanding. I love being allowed in the clubhouse. Thanks for all the content. 5 stars." Thank you, Chris. And if you want to be like Chris, support us. A couple ways you can do that. First of all, it is free to go leave a 5-star review, comment, all of that type of stuff. It helps us on the podcast feed. We appreciate it. If you want to take a little bit further, become a Clubhouse member. Tier start at $5. You get exclusive access to the recording of this show twice a week. We are going to be doing a post-Raw review show this Monday night just for Clubhouse members. Our gold level member, Matthew England, is going to be my co-host for that event, and we are always adding new interviews and other content. And, of course, the Discord, where you can come acknowledge my existence. If you would like to come over to the Discord, it'd be wonderful. I would love that. All right, that's it as far as housekeeping and everything goes. Before we get to Brutus, anything you want to put over here to wrap up the show today, Ennis?
just my Twitter at Innes_McVey, where you can find my mostly video game tweets. But if you're into that, sure, go follow.
Hey, I'm not into video games, but I like Innes. Just follow him anyway. You don't need to be into video games to follow Innes. It's fine. That's everything, everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week. And here it is to close out the show, my interview with Brutus Creed.
It's Nick Hausman here from House of Wrestling. I'm at the Royal Rumble Media Junket, and right now I am joined by one half of the Creed brothers, Brutus Creed. Brutus, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it.
Now, you do one of the most dangerous moves in all of WWE. For those of you that don't know, it's called the Brutus Ball. If you've ever gone to do a cannonball into a pool, imagine doing that onto concrete.
Yeah. In all fairness, I haven't ever gotten hurt. No one's gotten hurt during it. But it knocks them out. It knocks them down,
It does knock them out. Now, you guys have moved into a variation where it's kind of like the doomsday device, right?
Correct. Yeah, it was never that way at first, but then we decided to make it as our finish because of how devastating it was.
It looks far better, and I'm far less concerned for you watching it as a doomsday device inside of a ring. Can you just kind of walk me through the origin of the Brutus Ball? How did you decide to do this insane thing?
I was at the Performance Center training, trying to get better. We were practicing dives. I said, what if this was my dive? Jokingly, laughingly, I hit a Brutus Ball, and my brother and I were laughing. Okay, and come stand and deliver a few months later. I was the biggest guy in the match. I said, I'm going to dive on these guys. And it ended up being the Brutus Ball. I dove on 3 people. I think it was Wesley, Marcel, and I want to say Nash Carter. After I hit it, I threw one in the ring, and I got back in the back, and Triple H said, that was one of the coolest things I ever seen. And from there, I go, okay, now I got to make it a finish.
Because what was crazy about the Brutus Ball is everybody was cropping you out, and they were putting you in all these different memes. Are you familiar with all the Brutus?
Yeah. One was a catch-up one into a pool. I think I was a basketball in a basketball hoop. Yeah, I remember those.
How was it becoming a popular viral meme?
I think it's hilarious. I like the one Kurt Angle's got currently where he's just staring at the so I think they're funny.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, I talked to your brother a little bit earlier. Interestingly, he said that he thought he was going to be the one to carry the team to the main roster. He said, within 3 years, I'm going to take my brother, I'm going to put him on my back, and we're going to bring him to the main roster. Before I even ask you any more questions, can you react to what your brother told me about you and him coming into WWE?
Wait, hold up. Like, together as...
He said to me, yeah, right? He said to me, I really thought I was going to have to carry my brother on my back, and I'd get us to the main roster within 3 years. But then he said, you have improved so much. Yeah. You become your own man. You become a wonderful performer. But that was his initial thoughts when coming into the company.
Yeah, he slept on me. You know what happens, right? Tom Brady didn't get drafted till later. Come on now.
I was about to say, dude.
I feel like I definitely feel like I was born to do something, and this was it. I feel like I've improved. I feel like I belong now. Whereas at first, maybe during the main roster and even our times and starting in NXT, I was still uncomfortable. I was trying to figure it out. Yeah. But now I feel like I'm starting to figure it out for sure.
Because he signed first, right? So did he have to kind of convince you to come into WWE?
Not really. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily convinced, but because I always wanted to be. But I remember when I placed at NCAAs and I All-American, that was my ticket to get a tryout. And I was like, all right, now it's going to happen because now I'm recognized, I have credentials. So we trained every day together to best prepare me for that and best prepare him for when he started.
Man, you guys like a house of fire came to the main roster. Big win over Alpha Academy, right? Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about that first, man. You spent so much time in NXT. You come to the main roster, you beat a legitimate, credible tag team like the Alpha Academy. What was going through your head when that happened?
So when it happened, we flew in. We didn't know what was really happening in terms of, we thought we had an appearance. We weren't sure what it was. We actually ended up having a match. We performed, we wrestled, we won. Holy crap, we had to fly actually right after, get on a plane to go to NXT and have a tables, ladders, and scares match the next night. So we didn't have time to digest really necessarily what happened. After we did that, I got married the next day. After I got married the next day, Trent called me, hey, we want you full-time on the main roster. I was like, what is going on? So a ton of a roller coaster of emotions and not much sleep.
So is your wife wrestling? Is she a wrestling person? She's not a wrestling person?
She's not a wrestling person.
Okay. How hard is it to, now that you're on the main roster, you got to travel around the country, how does that affect your life?
I guess being away from home a little bit, but it's worth it in the end. And the good outweigh the bad. It affects it in a positive way.
Awesome. All right, Brutus, I want to thank you so much for the time, man.
All right, thank you.
Very happy for you and everything.
Thank you.
Couldn't wait to talk about the Brutus ball with you. I had to know what kind of psycho